The space station Harmony hung like a giant metal flower among the stars, its 6 large petal-shaped sections spread out from a central hub. Each petal housed different alien races who had come together to share knowledge and build peace. Mina stood by the large window in the main reception hall, looking out at the stars. Her blue skin caught the light from the nearby sun. She touched the mark on her wrist, a small circle that had been dull and gray since her birth. All Lyrians had this mark. It would glow only when they met their soulmate. Still hoping for a miracle? Asked Duna, her friend and fellow aide. Mina quickly pulled her sleeve down to cover the mark. No, I have accepted my fate. My mark will never activate. You never know, Duna said, her purple eyes kind. There are thousands of Lyrians you haven't met yet, and none of them are my match, Mina said. I would have felt something by now. What she didn't say was that she had stopped hoping years ago. At 25, most Lyrians had already found their match. The mark would glow when they touched their soulmate for the first time, but Mina's mark stayed dull and lifeless, no matter how many people she met. Ambassador June wants you in the main hall, Duna said. The human delegate has arrived. Mina nodded and straightened her formal blue uniform. Humans. Do you think they're really as strange as everyone says? Stranger, Duna replied with a smile. They only discovered faster than light travel 10 years ago. Before that, they thought they were alone in the universe. Mina had studied humans since they were assigned as her first diplomatic case. Their planet, Earth, was far from the main trade routes. They had developed alone, without any guidance from older races. Most aliens saw them as primitive, but Mina found them fascinating. They changed and adapted so quickly. The main reception hall was filled with representatives from a dozen different worlds. Tall, thin Valians with their 4 arms stood next to short, sturdy Nexans. The room buzzed with translator devices turning alien languages into words everyone could understand. Ambassador June, the head of the Lyrian delegation, waved Mina over. There you are. I want you to be the personal guide for the human delegate. Show him our ways, teach him our customs. Me? Mina asked, surprised. This was a big honor for someone so young. Why me? Because you've studied them more than anyone else here, June said. And because this is your chance to prove yourself. Mina nodded, her heart beating faster. This was her chance to move up from junior aide to full diplomat. Here they come, June whispered. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. 3 humans walked in. 2 wore matching black uniforms with Earth's symbol, a blue circle with white lines, on their shoulders. They must be guards. Between them walked a man in a white suit. Mina had seen pictures of humans, but seeing one in person was different. His skin was a light brown, much darker than her blue. His black hair was cut short. He stood straight and tall, looking around with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything. That is Hyun, Jun said, Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. As the human walked through the crowd, aliens moved back slightly. Not out of fear, Mina thought, but out of curiosity. Humans were still new and unknown. Ambassador Jun stepped forward. Welcome to Harmony Station, Ambassador Hyun. I am Jun of Lyris. The human bowed his head slightly. Thank you for your welcome. I am honored to represent Earth in this historic meeting. His voice was deeper than Mina expected. The translator made his words sound flat, but she could hear the natural rhythm behind them. This is Mina, Jun said, waving her forward. She will be your guide during your stay. Mina stepped up and bowed as was proper for her rank. Welcome, Ambassador. I am at your service. Hyun smiled at her. It was a small smile, just a slight lifting of his lips, but it reached his eyes. Please, call me Hyun. All this ambassador talk makes me feel old. Mina was surprised. Lyrian diplomats never asked to be called by their first names. It was considered too personal, but she had studied human customs and knew they were more casual. As you wish, Hyun, she said. Then came the moment of formal greeting. On Harmony Station, each race kept their own greeting customs when meeting for the first time. For Lyrisians, it was a light touch of hands, palm to palm. Minna held out her right hand, palm up. Hyun looked at it for a moment, then placed his palm against hers. The touch was warm. Human skin felt different, softer somehow, with tiny hairs she could barely feel. But that wasn't what made Minna freeze in place. It was the sudden, sharp heat in her wrist. Her mark, the dull gray circle that had never changed in her 25 years of life, was now glowing with bright blue light. The light pulsed in time with her heartbeat, growing brighter with each second. Minna couldn't move, couldn't speak. Around her, the reception hall fell silent as everyone turned to look at the light coming from her wrist. Hyun frowned, not understanding what was happening. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Minna tried to answer, but no words came out. This was impossible. The mark only activated for soulmates, and soulmates were always other Lyrisians. Always. In all of recorded history, no Lyrisian had ever matched with another species. Yet here she was, her mark blazing with light, connected to a human. Ambassador June stepped forward quickly, breaking their hand contact. The light from Minna's mark dimmed slightly but didn't go out. It continued to pulse. "What's happening?" Hyun asked, looking from Minna to June and back. "Did I do something wrong?" June's face was a mask of shock. "No," he said stiffly. "This is unexpected. Minna, you should go to medical right away." "Medical?" Hyun asked, concern in his voice. "Is she sick?" "No." Minna finally found her voice. It sounded strange to her own ears. "I'm not sick. This is..." She couldn't finish. How could she explain to this human that according to everything her people believed, he was her soulmate, the one person in the entire universe whose mind and soul matched hers perfectly? "This must be a mistake," June said quietly, "a malfunction in her mark." But Minna knew it wasn't. The warm feeling spreading through her body, the sense of rightness that came with the glowing mark. These couldn't be faked. Somehow, against all odds and beliefs, this human was her match. "I need to sit down," she said. Hyun immediately moved to help her to a nearby chair. As his hand touched her arm, the mark glowed even brighter. Gasps echoed around the room. "Please," Minna said to the gathering crowd. "I need some air." The aliens backed away, but their eyes stayed fixed on her glowing mark. She knew what they were thinking. This was impossible. This was against nature. This changed everything they thought they knew about Lyrisian biology. Hyun knelt beside her chair. "I don't understand what's happening," he said softly, "but I can see it's important. Can I help?" Minna looked into his dark brown eyes. They were so different from Lyrisian eyes. No inner eyelid, no reflective layer, yet something in them called to her, something she recognized deep within herself. "You already have," she whispered. Before she could say more, medical staff rushed in. 2 Lyrisian doctors quickly moved toward her, their faces showing the same shock as everyone else when they saw her glowing mark. "We need to examine you," one said, not even looking at Hyun. "What about him?" Minna asked, gesturing to the human. "Him," the doctor said, confused. Then understanding dawned. "You can't possibly think." "No, that's not possible. There must be another explanation." As they helped her up, Minna looked back at Hyun. He stood watching her, confusion clear on his face. She wanted to explain, to tell him what it meant that her mark had activated for him. But how could she, when she herself didn't understand how it was possible? The last thing she saw before they took her away was Hyun's concerned face, and the strange feeling that her life had just changed forever. Because if a human could be a Lyrisian soulmate, then everything her people believed about themselves and their place in the universe was wrong. The medical bay of Harmony Station was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Minna sat on an exam table while 3 Lyrisian doctors studied her glowing mark. It had been 6 hours since the incident with Hyun, and the mark still pulsed with blue light. "This makes no sense," said Dr. Tay, the oldest of the three. His green eyes narrowed as he scanned her wrist again. "The readings show this is a true soulmate activation, but that's impossible." "Clearly, it's not impossible," Minna said. She was tired of being treated like she had done something wrong. "It happened. Perhaps it's a new kind of illness," suggested another doctor. "Something that mimics the mark activation." Minna pulled her wrist away. "It's not an illness. I can feel the connection. It's real." The doctors exchanged worried looks. To them, this was not a miracle but a disaster, a threat to everything Lyrisians believed about themselves. For thousands of years, Lyrisians had taught that the Soulmate mark was a sacred gift. It proved they were special among all races, chosen by the universe to find their perfect match. The mark connected two Lyrisians whose minds were perfectly in tune, but only ever Lyrisians. The idea that a human could trigger a mark went against their most basic beliefs. "The High Council has been informed," Dr. Ta said. "They're sending a special team from Lyris. Until they arrive, you are to have no contact with the human." "His name is Hyun," Minna said. "And why can't I see him?" "This affects him too." "This is a Lyrisian matter," Dr. Ta said firmly. "Humans have no part in our sacred traditions." Minna wanted to argue, but she knew it would be useless. The doctors had already decided this was some kind of mistake or trick. They couldn't accept what was right in front of them. After the doctors left, Minna's friend Duma slipped into the room. Her purple eyes were wide with excitement. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Your mark really activated for the human?" Minna nodded and showed her the glowing mark. "Yes, and I can feel it, Duma. It's not a mistake. This is amazing." Duma sat beside her. "The whole station is talking about it. Some people are scared, others are excited. But everyone wants to know what it means." "What does Hyun say?" Minna asked. "Has anyone explained to him what happened?" Duna shook her head. "The ambassadors are keeping him away from our people, but I heard he's been asking about you." Minna felt a warm feeling at that news. She barely knew Hyun, had only touched his hand once, yet she felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. "I need to see him," she said. "He deserves to know what this means." "The High Council has ordered you to stay away from him," Duna reminded her. "Since when do we let old politicians decide our fate?" Minna stood up. "Will you help me?" Duna hesitated, then smiled. "I'll create a distraction. The garden section is quiet this time of night. I'll send him there." Hyun stood among the strange plants of Harmony Station's garden section. The plants glowed with soft blue and purple light, illuminating the paths between them. It was beautiful, but he barely noticed. His mind was still on the blue alien girl, Minna, and what had happened when they touched. The light from her wrist, the shocked faces of everyone around them. Something important had happened, but no one would explain what. After Minna was taken away, Hyun had been quickly escorted to his quarters. Ambassador Jun apologized stiffly, saying there had been an unexpected reaction, and promising to explain later. But no explanation came. Instead, he was told to avoid all contact with Lyrisian delegates until further notice. "This is not how I imagined my first day," Hyun muttered to himself. "Mine either," said a voice behind him. Hyun turned to see Minna standing there, a dark cloak covering her blue uniform. Her mark still glowed faintly through the fabric around her wrist. "You're okay," he said, relieved. "They wouldn't tell me anything. Are you ill?" "No," Minna said. She looked around nervously, then stepped closer. "I don't have much time. Duna can only distract the guards for a few minutes." "Guards? Why are there guards? What's happening?" Hyun asked. Minna took a deep breath. "Do you know what this is?" She pulled back her sleeve to show the glowing mark. "Some kind of technology," Hyun guessed. "A communication device." "It's a soulmate mark," Minna explained. "All Lyrisians are born with one. It stays gray and dull until we meet our perfect match. The one person in the universe whose mind and soul are compatible with ours. When we touch that person, the mark activates. Hyun's eyes widened as he understood. And it activated when you touched me. Minna nodded. Yes, but this has never happened before. The mark is only supposed to activate with another Laurisian, never with another species. So what does it mean? Hyun asked. I don't know, Minna admitted, but I can feel the connection between us. Can you feel it too? Hyun wasn't sure what to say. Humans didn't have soulmate marks or any biological way to identify their perfect match. The whole idea seemed like a fantasy to him. Yet he couldn't deny that he had felt something when they touched. A strange pull, like a magnet drawing him toward her. I felt something, he said carefully. But humans don't have marks like yours. We don't have any way to know who our soulmate is supposed to be. May I? Minna asked, holding out her hand. Hesitantly, Hyun reached out and placed his palm against hers. Immediately, her mark blazed with bright blue light. But this time, something else happened too. A warm feeling spread up his arm and through his chest, like sunlight flowing through his veins. And with it came something else. Emotions that weren't his. Wonder, fear, hope. They flowed into his mind like water. I can feel what you're feeling, he gasped, pulling his hand away. The sensation immediately stopped. Mina's eyes were wide. That's not supposed to happen either. Usually only long-time bonded pairs can share emotions, and even then, not so clearly. This is impossible, Hyun said, echoing what the Laurisian doctors had said. Yet it happened, Minna replied with a small smile. Before they could say more, a shout came from the entrance to the garden. Guards in Laurisian uniforms were running toward them. You need to go, Minna said quickly. The High Council is sending a special team to study me. They'll want to study you too, but the Earth delegates should refuse. It's your right. Why would I refuse? Maybe they can figure out what's happening, Hyun said. Mina's face grew serious. Because some Laurisians will see this as a threat, a human who can activate our sacred mark. They might claim you use technology to fake it, or that humans have some power to manipulate our biology. The guards were getting closer. Minna squeezed Hyun's hand one last time, sending a rush of emotions through the connection. Trust your feelings, she whispered. What we have is real. Then she turned and walked toward the guards, leaving Hyun standing alone among the glowing plants. The next day, the news spread throughout Harmony Station. The Laurisian High Council had ordered Mina to return to their homeworld immediately. They claimed she needed special treatment for an unknown condition. At the same time, they filed a formal complaint against Earth, claiming humans might have developed technology to interfere with Laurisian biology. Hyun stood in Ambassador Lee's office, the older woman pacing back and forth as she read the complaint. This is ridiculous, Lee said. We've barely developed faster than light travel. How could we possibly have technology to affect alien biology in ways they don't even understand? They're scared, Hyun said. This goes against everything they believe. And what do you believe? Lee asked, looking at him closely. Do you think there's any truth to this soulmate business? Hyun thought about the rush of emotions he had felt when touching Mina's hand, the connection that had formed between them in just moments. I don't know, he said honestly, but I know Mina believes it, and I know they shouldn't force her to go back to Lyris against her will. They're her people, Lee pointed out. We can't interfere in their cultural practices, even if those practices might harm her. Hyun asked. She told me some Laurisians would see this as a threat. What if they try to fix her by destroying the mark? Ambassador Lee frowned. That would be concerning. I'll speak with the station director about ensuring her safety. As Hyun left the office, he looked down at his hand, remembering the feeling of connection with Mina. Humans didn't have soulmate marks, but that didn't mean they couldn't recognize when something special happened. And something special had definitely happened between them. Something that crossed the boundaries between species and challenged the beliefs of an entire civilization. The question was, what would he do about it? 3 days had passed since Mina was ordered to return to Lyris. 3 days of meetings, arguments, and growing tension on Harmony Station. Hyun had not seen Mina since their secret meeting in the garden. The Lyrisian delegation kept her hidden away, preparing her for the journey home. Hyun sat in the Earth delegation's office, watching as Ambassador Lee argued with the station director on a video screen. "This is becoming a diplomatic incident," the director said. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of stress in his species. "The Lyrisians are threatening to cut off all trade with 3 different worlds if we interfere." "We're not asking to interfere," Lee replied calmly. "We're asking for a neutral medical examination before they take her away. If something about human biology triggered her mark, we need to understand it." The director sighed. "I'll try again, but don't expect much. The Lyrisian high priest arrived this morning, and he's not interested in scientific explanations." When the call ended, Lee turned to Hyun with a tired look. "This is getting worse. The Lyrisians are now saying humans might be dangerous to their people. They're calling for restrictions on human movement throughout the station." "That's ridiculous," Hyun said. "One mark activated, and suddenly we're a threat to their entire species." "It's not about logic," Lee said. "It's about belief. Their whole society is built around the idea that the marks connect Lyrisians to other Lyrisians. If that's not true, what else might they be wrong about?" Hyun looked down at his hand, remembering the connection he had felt with Mina. "Have you heard anything about her? Is she okay?" "My sources say she's being kept in the Lyrisian embassy section. The high priest is performing some kind of spiritual cleansing before they leave." Lee frowned. "There are rumors they plan to surgically remove her mark when they return to Lyris." "Remove it?" Hyun stood up. "They can't do that. It's part of her. It's their culture, Hyun. We have limited say in how they treat their own people." Hyun paced the room, frustration building inside him. "There has to be something we can do." A knock at the door interrupted them. A station security officer stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Ambassador, we have a situation. A group of Lyrisian scientists is requesting to speak with you. They say it's about the incident." Lee and Hyun exchanged surprised looks. "Send them in," Lee said. 3 Lyrisians entered the room. Unlike the formal robes of the diplomats, they wore simple gray uniforms with science insignia. The leader, a female with dark blue skin, stepped forward. "I am Dr. Jin, head of biological research at the Lyrisian Science Academy. These are my colleagues, Dr. Ba and Dr. Sun." She glanced nervously at the door. "We don't have much time. The high priest doesn't know we're here." "What can we do for you, Doctor?" Lee asked. "We want to study the connection between your diplomat and Mina," Dr. Jin said. "Not to disprove it, but to understand it." Hyun stepped forward. "Why would you go against your leaders?" Dr. Jin's face showed determination. "Because we are scientists first, Lyrisians second. What happened between you two challenges everything we thought we knew about the marks. And some of us have had doubts for years." "Doubts?" Hyun asked. Dr. Ba, a male with lighter blue skin, spoke up. "The official teaching is that the marks connect 2 Lyrisians whose minds are perfectly matched. But our research suggests it's more complex. The marks react to specific neural patterns, not to Lyrisian DNA. In theory," Dr. Jin added, "any species with compatible neural patterns could trigger a mark. It's just that no other species has ever had patterns similar enough to ours. Until now." Hope rose in Hyun's chest. "So you're saying what happened between Mina and me is real? Not a mistake or a trick?" "We believe so," Dr. Jin said. "But we need to run tests to be sure. And we need to do it quickly, before the high priest takes Mina back to Lyris. If he does," Dr. Sun said quietly, "they will remove her mark and destroy any evidence that this happened." Ambassador Lee folded her hands. "This is very interesting, but I don't see how we can help. The Lyrisian embassy won't let us near Mina." Dr. Jin smiled slightly. "That's where you're wrong. Minna isn't at the embassy anymore. She's with us. The secret laboratory was hidden in a rarely used section of the station. Dr. Jin's team had set it up years ago to conduct research outside the restrictions of Lyrian religious authorities. When Hyun entered, he immediately saw Mina sitting on an exam table. Her eyes lit up when she saw him, and her mark glowed brighter. "You came," she said. "Of course I came." Hyun moved toward her, then hesitated, looking at the scientists. "Go ahead," Dr. Jin said. "We need to observe what happens when you touch." Carefully, Hyun took Mina's hand. The now familiar rush of emotions flowed between them, stronger than before. Happiness, relief, worry, all mingled together. "The readings are amazing," Dr. Ba said, watching a screen. "Their neural patterns are synchronizing. I've never seen anything like it." For the next hour, the scientists ran various tests. They measured brain waves, heart rates, and the energy output from Mina's mark. They took samples of skin cells and ran genetic comparisons. Finally, Dr. Jin gathered everyone together to share their findings. "It's remarkable," she said. "Human neural patterns have a unique flexibility we've never seen in any other species. When Hyun and Mina connect, his brain actually adapts to match her patterns, creating a perfect sync." "Is that why I can feel her emotions?" Hyun asked. "Exactly," Dr. Ba confirmed. "Traditional Lyrian bonds take years to develop that level of connection, but your brain adapts almost instantly." Mina looked at Hyun with wonder. "So it's real. You really are my soulmate." "There's more," Dr. Sun added. "We believe this neural flexibility might be common in humans. In theory, humans might be compatible with multiple species, not just Lyrians." Ambassador Lee, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Are you suggesting humans could form these kinds of connections with other aliens too?" "It's possible," Dr. Jin said. "Human brains seem specially adapted to form deep connections across species boundaries. It's unprecedented in galactic history." The implications were enormous. If humans could connect with multiple alien species on such a deep level, it would change their place in the galactic community. No longer newcomers, they might become central to interspecies relations. "We need to publish these findings," Dr. Ba said. "The whole galaxy should know about this." "The High Priest will try to stop you," Mina warned. "He's already declared the connection a spiritual corruption." "That's why we need to act quickly," Dr. Jin agreed. "We've prepared a report for the Galactic Science Council. With Earth's permission, we'll submit it today." Ambassador Lee nodded. "You have our full support." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the section. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. "They'd found us," Dr. Sun said, checking the security screen. "Lyrian security forces are breaking through the outer doors." Dr. Jin turned to Hyun and Mina. "You need to go. Take the emergency shuttle in Docking Bay 7. It's already programmed to reach the neutral zone." "You want us to run?" Hyun asked in disbelief. "Just until the Science Council reviews our findings," Dr. Jin explained. "Once the truth is officially recognized, the High Priest can't silence it." "But you'll be arrested," Mina protested. Dr. Ba smiled sadly. "Some truths are worth sacrificing for." The sounds of the security team grew louder. They had minutes at most. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Jin said quickly. "Mina, your mark is not just a soulmate indicator. In the right pair bond, it can enhance natural abilities. Mental connections, empathy, even physical capabilities might be strengthened." "What does that mean for us?" Mina asked. "It means your connection could become more powerful than any normal Lyrian bond, but only if you stay together and let it develop naturally." The door at the end of the corridor burst open. Lyrian security officers poured in, followed by the High Priest in his flowing red robes. "There they are," the priest shouted. "Seize them all." Ambassador Lee stepped forward, putting herself between the security team and the others. "As an Earth diplomat, I protest this action. These scientists are under Earth's protection, while sharing scientific knowledge. The delaying tactic worked. While Lee argued with the security team, Dr. Jin led Hyun and Minna to a side door. "The shuttle is through there, 3 levels down," she whispered. "The report is already loaded in its computer. Get it to the Science Council." Minna hugged each of the scientists. "Thank you for believing in us." "Go," Dr. Jin said. "Show the galaxy what humans and Lyrisians can achieve together." As they slipped through the door, Hyun looked back at the brave scientists who had risked everything to defend the truth. Whatever happened next, he knew the galaxy would never be the same. Because for the first time in history, an alien had found her soulmate in a human. And that connection might just change everything. The small shuttle sped through space, its engines pushed to maximum power. Inside, Hyun checked the navigation screen while Minna sent another message to the Galactic Science Council. "Any response?" Hyun asked. Minna shook her head. "Nothing yet, but the data package from Dr. Jin was received. They have the evidence." It had been 2 days since their escape from Harmony Station. 2 days of running, hiding, and hoping the scientists' findings would reach the right people before the Lyrisian High Priest could stop them. Hyun looked at Minna. Her blue skin seemed paler than before, and dark circles showed under her eyes. Her mark still glowed, but the light pulsed slower now, as if tired. "Are you okay?" he asked. "The mark takes energy," she explained. "Normally, both partners share the load. But you don't have a mark, so mine is working harder." Hyun took her hand. Immediately, warmth flowed between them, and the mark's light strengthened. "Better?" he asked. Minna smiled. "Yes, the connection helps." Over the past days, their bond had grown stronger. Hyun could now sense Minna's feelings even without touching her, though the connection was clearer with contact. Sometimes, he caught glimpses of her thoughts, not words, but images and impressions. 3 ships approaching, the shuttle's computer announced. Lyrisian design, military class. Minna's face showed fear. The High Priest must have sent them. "They'll force us to return to Lyris." "We're in neutral space," Hyun said. "They can't legally take us by force." "The High Priest doesn't care about laws," Minna replied. "He believes he's saving our species from corruption." The communication screen lit up. A stern Lyrisian face appeared. An officer in military uniform. "Shuttle CR-7, this is Captain Kyo of the Lyrisian Defense Force. You are carrying a Lyrisian citizen who must return home for medical treatment. Prepare to be boarded." "We refuse," Hyun said firmly. "Minna is under Earth's protection. We have evidence that needs to reach the Galactic Science Council." "Your evidence is false," the captain replied. "The High Priest has declared it religious sabotage. Last warning, power down your engines." The screen went dark. Around them, the 3 Lyrisian ships moved into position, ready to force the shuttle to stop. "What do we do?" Minna asked. Before Hyun could answer, the computer announced, "Multiple ships detected. Earth vessels approaching at high speed." Outside the view screen, 5 sleek ships appeared, moving between the shuttle and the Lyrisian vessels. Their design was simpler than the alien ships, but they moved with impressive speed and precision. The communication screen activated again. This time, it showed a human woman in an Earth Defense uniform. "This is Commander Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here under orders from Earth Central Command. The scientists and citizens aboard that shuttle are under our protection." "This is a Lyrisian matter," Captain Kyo protested. "You have no right to interfere." "We have every right to protect our diplomat," Commander Park replied. "And we have more ships on the way. I suggest you stand down." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the Lyrisian captain spoke again. "This is an act of war, human. The High Council will not forget this." "It's not war," Commander Park said calmly. "It's science. And speaking of science," she smiled. "Look behind you." The Lyrisian ships suddenly turned, their sensors detecting new arrivals. A massive ship had appeared, dwarfing all others. Its smooth silver surface reflected the starlight. On its side was the symbol of the Galactic Science Council, a spiral of stars inside a circle. "This is Chief Scientist Zim of the Galactic Science Council," a new voice announced. "All military vessels are ordered to stand down. This matter is now under Council jurisdiction." The Lyrisian ships hesitated, then slowly moved away. Earth's vessels remained in protective formation around the shuttle. "Shuttle CR-7, Chief Scientist Zim continued, you are invited aboard the Council vessel to present your evidence. Safe passage is guaranteed." Hyun and Minna looked at each other, relief washing over them. "We did it," Minna whispered. "They're going to listen." The meeting hall of the Science Council ship was filled with representatives from 20 different worlds. At the center sat the 7 chief scientists who led the council. Along one wall, a group of Lyrisian officials watched with angry faces. The high priest was not among them. He had refused to attend, calling the meeting spiritual treason. Hyun and Minna stood together as Dr. Jin's report was displayed on the main screen. The 3 Lyrisian scientists had been arrested, but later released when the Science Council demanded it. "The evidence is clear," Chief Scientist Zim announced. His 4-armed body swayed as he spoke, a sign of excitement in his species. "Human neural patterns show unprecedented flexibility and compatibility. Their brains can adapt to match the patterns of other species, creating deep connections that were previously thought impossible." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some aliens looked fascinated, others worried. Further tests confirmed that the Soulmate mark activation between Minna and Hyun is genuine, Zim continued. "It is not a malfunction or a trick. It is a natural biological response to compatible neural patterns." A Lyrisian official stood up. "This goes against all our teachings. The marks are sacred gifts meant to connect Lyrisian to Lyrisian. This human corruption must be stopped." "Science doesn't care about your teachings," Zim replied firmly. "Facts are facts. And the fact is, humans have a unique ability that could change galactic relations forever." He turned to Hyun and Minna. "Would you demonstrate the connection, please?" Nervously, they stepped forward. When Hyun took Minna's hand, her mark glowed with bright blue light. The scientists had attached small sensors to both their heads, and a screen behind them showed their brain patterns slowly synchronizing. "Remarkable," one of the chief scientists whispered. "Complete neural harmony." "But that's not all," Zim said. "Our preliminary research suggests humans might be compatible with multiple species, not just Lyrisians. Their neural flexibility allows them to form connections that bridge biological differences." He pressed a button, and new images appeared on the screen. They showed brain scans from humans and various alien species, with overlapping patterns highlighted. "Humans may be the missing link we've been seeking for centuries, a species that can truly understand others at the deepest level." The implications were enormous. For thousands of years, different species had struggled to truly understand each other. Despite translator technology and diplomatic efforts, deep cultural differences remained. But if humans could form neural connections with multiple species, they could become bridges between worlds. One by one, representatives from different planets stood to speak. Some expressed excitement about the possibilities. Others voiced concerns about human influence growing too quickly. The debate continued for hours. Through it all, Hyun and Minna remained connected, their hands clasped together. Their bond had started this chain of events, and now they watched as it changed the galaxy's future. Finally, Chief Scientist Zim called for order.